good afternoon to our participants today. My name is Alexandra Tsvetkova, and together with my colleague Georgina Humphreys, we are going to present you the TREIO project, the tools that we have developed over the course of the project, but also we'll try to give you some background of the different initiatives that stand behind the ideas that we have implemented along the way, and why we have decided to opt for certain decisions. You're free to comment at any point of time, either by raising your hand and voicing your concerns or comments directly, or you can put them in the chat. I don't speak Portuguese, so I hope that my colleague interpreters will support me in the process, even if you write down in Portuguese. Today's sessions is recorded, so after the end of this webinar series, somewhere around the end of the week, you'll be able to receive both the recording and the presentation from today. And then we also provide you with some additional information and materials that we will touch upon during the presentation today. So let us start first with the agenda for the day. So as I mentioned, we are going to briefly touch upon the various digitalization initiatives that matters for the purposes of this webinar. And then first my colleague Georgina and then myself will present the tools that we have developed in the TREIO project for our end users, being professionals like yourself who are involved in judicial cooperation matters, and in particular with regards to the European investigation order exchanges. And at the very end, we'll let you know a bit more of how you can provide, how you can receive access to all the tools that we are to mention during the day, but also you'll be available to ask all your questions regarding what you just have just heard during the session, or any other question that you may have regarding our materials. So let's begin. As you might know, there are a number of these digitalization initiatives that takes place on EU level that I've just mentioned. And when it comes to judiciary, these initiatives cover mostly the electronic exchange of information in cross-border transactions and exchange of evidence. From a very practical point of view, I think all these recent developments dates back to 2010, when several member states decided to initiate a project to develop a secure communication channel for data exchanges between judicial authorities. And when the original idea came to an end in 2016, we had as an end result of this initiative the system that we know now as eCodex. And it has, even at the time, it was so promising as an infrastructure, and as a result of the changes that there were a number of member states opting to join this infrastructure, and there were also a number of spin-off projects allocated to different judicial cooperation instruments or specific use cases that were to upgrade the infrastructure at the time. The Commission itself was also pretty happy with the result and find it very promising for future use. So after several years of negotiations, a regulation on eCodex was adopted, defining the roles, responsibilities, and the legal framework for the operating of the system, thus effectively making it the European secure communication channel for exchange of data and documents. Again, back in 2016, based on eCodex, the Commission decided to go a step further, developing the so-called e-evidence digital exchange system. And the idea behind this system is for the Commission to provide a common solution to all member states, trying to enhance further the digitalization process in the judicial cooperation domain. And if you think of the year, it was obviously extremely suitable to start with the exchanges of EIOs, mutual legal assistance forms, and interception of telecommunication notifications, considering that in 2017, the EIO directive was to apply. And unfortunately, while this project was very well accepted by the member states, unfortunately, it was delayed several times due to the COVID-19 crisis, both on the side of the Commission and the member states eager to adopt this solution. It was finally launched in May 2022, and to date, there are 11 member states that have already joined the digital exchange of European investigation orders in a piloting mode. Being in a piloting mode means that the tool is not used nationwide, but there are a number of competent authorities that have deployed it. They are currently exchanging EIOs, and they're also monitoring the behavior of the system, strategizing on how to deploy it on a full scale in those specific states. We also know of at least 5 or 6 member states that are in their very final stages of deployment and are to join this group of piloting states pretty soon. Others are still collaborating on the right strategy, on the right approach for adoption, but they have all confirmed that they're eager to deploy the system in the next year plus. So these are the most important developments from a purely technical point of view. We have now an official infrastructure for secure communication between judicial authorities provided by the eCodex system. And we also have this solution provided by the Commission for the purposes of exchanging EIOs, MLAs, and ITNs, even if it's still in a piloting mode. Another initiative that is quite important for the purposes of this session today is the newly adopted regulation on the digitalization of judicial cooperation and access to justice in cross-border civil, commercial, and criminal matters. It was adopted in December 2023. It's already in force and shall apply from 1st of May 2025. What this new regulation brings are new rules with regards to video conferencing, but also the use of other distance communication technologies in oral hearings. It also provides for rules allowing electronic communication between natural or legal persons or their representatives and the respective competent authorities in the process. It delivers on specific rules for the recognition of documents with electronic signatures or seals, but also reflect on the payment of fees through electronic means in the judicial context. However, while these rules are extremely useful for the judiciary, the regulation builds on top of that and also amends 8 other legislative acts, allowing for the further digitalization of the judicial cooperation processes. So the regulation says that communication pursuant to a total of 24 different legislative instruments will become will be done in a digital format, mandatory from a certain point in time using the eCodex system. So from there will be a gradual approach in adopting these digitalization measures from one legislative instrument to another, because it's obvious that going in a full blast for all the 24 legislative instruments will be quite an impossible challenge. Yet, the fact that eCodex system use becomes mandatory for these digital exchanges is already quite an important step further. The regulation also comments on the potential use of the eEDES digital exchange system by the member states. It is referred to as the reference implementation software, and the regulation gives the option to the member state to opt in on its usage or opt out of its usage if they have a national IT system that could play the same role. In reality, even with the current stage of deployment of the eEDES digital exchange system, we already see these different modalities of deployment. In some member states, it is still a standalone solution. In others, it is already integrated with the respective national case management system, while in others, there is a hybrid approach. So we already see the different strategies member states undertake, even at this voluntary stage of adoption. And we expect that this variety of processes will continue over time. As I said, there will be a gradual step-by-step approach towards the digitalization of all these 24 legislative instruments over time. And for that purpose, the European Commission has designed this roadmap, which shows exactly this gradual approach over time, but it also shows how the eEDES digital exchange system would be upgraded over time to serve the purposes of these digitalization measures. So the use of eCodex will become mandatory in 2025 for the service of documents and taking of evidence in civil and commercial cases. And then you see on the screen the gradual adoption of the system for all the other cooperation measures and instruments. And for the purposes of EIO being the center of the conversation in this session, the exchange of EIOs in digital format will become mandatory from 2028 on. And again, as a reminder, the member states are free to opt in or out the usage of the eEDES system. Now I'm going to show you a bit of a technical slide, but I just want to make sure that we all understand how this communication goes. So you imagine this here on the screen, on the very right side of the screen, is a competent authority somewhere in Portugal. And you're using the reference implementation software for EIO Exchanges. Each of these instances communicates with the national communication point under the eCodex umbrella. You have the secure channels provided by eCodex for communication with other member states. And on the other side, let's say you would like to send an EIO request to the Netherlands, for example. On the other side, you will have another eCodex communication contact point that will be linked to another instance of the reference implementation software. And that very same software will be used by the Dutch competent authorities. Now, the eEDES system looks and feels exactly like this shown here, this screenshot shown here. It's a system that is available in all European languages. You can easily switch from English to Portuguese, for example, and then all the menus, all the notifications, all the buttons and everything is translated automatically in Portuguese. Every time when the system is upgraded for another judicial cooperation instrument, following the roadmap that I showed you, the overall framework and the main functions of the system will remain the same. However, following the diversity and the different forms each of these legal instruments prescribes, this will be exactly the part that will change from one instrument to another. So the interface will remain the same, the signing option will remain the same, or the automated functionality, automated translation functionality, or any other feature common for all instruments. Yet the forms, the communication requirements, the actions that could be performed at each stage will differ depending on the judicial cooperation instruments that we are to use. Now, the biggest question is, why am I telling you all this since we're talking about a EU-funded project and some tools designed under that project? In reality, when TREIO was conceived back in 2019-2020, we already had in mind all these developments taking place or being conceived at that moment. So what we wanted to achieve with our project is to support the member states in aligning the different practices when implementing the EIO directive on one side, and on the other, giving professionals and competent authorities with specific tools to ease them in learning how to use the eEDES system further. So when we started the project, we focused first on person-to-person trainings and the related training content in this regard. So we have developed quite an extensive set of materials that cover for both legal business side of the EIO Exchanges, but also incorporate guidelines on how to use the eEDES system going from one stage to the next in the EIO workflow. These materials also allowed for specific adaptations, if such are desired, on national level. For example, there are guidelines on where and how to incorporate specifics regarding the EIO workflow on national level, how to comment on the different competencies the institutions may have in a particular state, how to integrate the case law and the different legal modalities there are in the context of the training materials and so on. And all these, both the materials and the guidelines, have been translated in 16 different languages on top of the original set in English, and Portuguese is among these languages. Then we started working with competent authorities across Europe, providing train-the-trainer activities, different online trainings, different in the sense of different modalities of online trainings, and a number of awareness events just like this one. And while the participants actually appreciated these activities quite a lot, it was also evident that sometimes they are not that efficient long-term as we would have liked to. While Portuguese is one of the piloting authorities, and in reality you could have a direct contact with people using the eEDES system in a piloting mode, in other member states it's not the case. For example, with Bulgaria, it was one of the first member states where we conducted trainings, but to date, they are not part of the piloting states using eEDES. So there's quite a big gap between the time when we provided the training and the point in which the system will be deployed in Bulgaria. And this gap of time does not serve well and does not sit well with the practitioners going through our trainings. So we're trying to find a more sustainable way going towards the end of the project on how and what is the best approach and how to go for that approach in order to deliver tools that will remain useful after the end of the project. And this is how we ended up designing an adaptive e-learning course that Georgina will present in a bit, And we also worked on the so-called TREIO eEDES simulator, which is a special software. It's exact replica of the original eEDES system, which is upgraded for training purposes. And I will also speak about this a little bit later. And then we are now at the very final stages of the project, where we are producing the TREIO toolkit. And what is this? So in reality, it's a set of sets. So we have tried to define the different needs of our audiences, be they end user professional, just like yourself, people who are directly involved in the EIO exchanges on a daily basis, be they trainers that might be interested in providing support or trainings on EIO exchanges and the use of eEDES, or they might also be competent authorities that are looking for a way to adopt and adjust our tools and methodologies for specific for the implementation of specific national strategies. And this is how we reached this point, because we already finalized the learning course in the TREIO eEDES simulator, and we are now willing to distribute information to as many professionals as possible on the use of these tools. Before we proceed, I noted that one of the participants send up something that I said, for which I'm pretty happy. But if there are any comment or concerns on the things that I've presented, you can either put them in the chat or voice them. Okay, then I think we are good to go. And now I'm giving the floor to Georgina, that will continue with a presentation of our e-learning course.
Thank you, Alex. So yes, we have the TREIO e-learning course, and the TREIO online training consists of three key elements. We have the e-learning platform, which has been set up to house and deliver the training. We have the online self-paced training itself, so the content, and we have select language versions. With this, we have the complementary TREIO eEDES simulator, which is used for training purposes for real-time training experience on how to use eEDES and the context of the EIO workflow. All in all, that delivers the TREIO online training and tools for professionals to carry out such training. We have several use cases for the TREIO training package. Actually, there are two packages, a full package and an eEDES package. The full package contains information about the EIO and eEDES and considers all aspects, legal, business and eEDES use. And then we have the eEDES package, which we utilize to cover aspects on how to use eEDES. And we also thought there was a need for a refresher training. So the full package also carries out a mechanism to also be able to be used as a refresher. So participants can select specific topics that they need to refresh their memory on, or and go back to and revise, for example, or they may be instructed to do so otherwise. We have several benefits, we feel, of the TREIO online training, the most obvious being the increased awareness of the EIO directive, EIO form, and the use of eEDES in the EIO workflow. But also we have a user-centered and active learning approach, where the professional is basically controlling their study. So there is no instructor required, which allows for greater flexibility and accessibility on behalf of the professionals carrying out the training. And the increased confidence by professionals at the end for the use of the eEDES platform. There are several aims and objectives to the TREIO online training, and these are specifically related to the structured knowledge of the EIO directive and EIO procedures, being able to identify investigative measures, but also how to overcome those challenges you might encounter in the application of the EIO, to be able to identify procedures for transmission and receipt of an EIO and follow those, and also to utilise eEDES in the sending and receiving of EIOs. By the end of the training, we hope that participants will have a well-rounded knowledge of all things EIO, whether it be legal, business, or workflow related, and also in the context of the eEDES system. As I mentioned, the e-learning content takes place online. It's self-paced and has a duration of up to 1 week for the full package and 2 to 3 days for the eEDS package. However, it probably won't take you that amount of days if you are dedicating some time to the training, but that amount of time is allotted in case of breaks, pauses, and practice of exercises and so on and so forth. The master copy of the e-learning is in English. However, there are select language versions, and then we target multiple stakeholders. So this is an all-in-one training which targets all stakeholders, whether you be a judge, a prosecutor, a clerk, or any other professional handling EIOs and the eEDS system. Here you can see the training overview. There are 5 modules to the full package we see here, but there are also 5 modules to the eEDS package. It just has fewer lessons. We also have some exercises, or here take-home exercises, tasks, and they cover specific themes represented there. There are just 3, but we have multiple exercises. And then we have the TREIO eEDS simulator, which is the thread through all our modules, lessons, and exercises. In terms of content, we have a collection of theory and practice, which is given, as some of the content is legal content and case law and procedures, but we've also provided visual aids, some videos, some tutorials in form of demos, also some knowledge checks, exercises, simulations, and finally the examination. We have here some content that we just demonstrate briefly to you. We have obviously text-based content. We also have graphics and animations. As you can see here, there's one graphic, but when we come to the next slide, you will see there's more graphics in the course. And then we have some animations which form either in clickable elements or videos like you just saw. We also have these knowledge checks, which are essentially quizzes throughout the course, usually at the end of modules or exercises. And then we have the examination, which appears in the same format for consistency and familiarity of the professionals undertaking the training. As I mentioned, we include some demonstrations. These are usually in video format. They have subtitling, generally not sound. Some of the shorter videos do have sound, but we were aware that you might be training in a workplace environment where sound is not possible. So therefore, subtitles are relied upon. You can pause the video, and you can also work alongside the video with the TREIO eEDS simulator. Here is a brief example of a demonstration. I won't go through it all, but as you can see here, you start the demo. You can choose the language in terms of subtitles. Here it's English, but with select language versions, it's obviously the language chosen. We have the ability to pause and move forwards and backwards. And also we have the video in chunks. So you can see here these little blocks along the bottom. These usually indicate specific sections or things that we think are important for you to know about. And you might find this additional information button on the right-hand side as a document and a plus. And when you click on it, it gives you more information we think is pertinent at this point in time. So in this case, it's about searching for a competent authority, but in other cases, it might be about translations or other aspects. And if we move on, we have the simulations. I mentioned that we have these embedded in the course. As you can see, it's different from the TREIO eEDES simulator, which is a separate entity itself, but these simulations are embedded in the actual content. They are usually consisting of clickable elements. As you will see here, we are starting to fill out an ITN request. You're given a set of instructions as you follow through, and you click on the element indicated to you. With this simulation, the downside is that you cannot enter text, but you can do in the TREIO eEDES simulator. So we have done the textual part for you. As you can see, you walk through as if you were filling out an ITN in this case, but it might be an EIO, MLA, etc. We also have these practical exercises. I mentioned there were 3 bullet points earlier covering topics, but we have 10 exercises in total. Some of the exercises, around 7, include 2 parts to them. They have the first part, which you see on the screen, is a scenario and a task, but also supplied with that are a guided set of instructions. The second part, as you see on the screen, is a task with a scenario, but you have no guided instructions, and you're expected to follow along with the TREIO eEDES simulator to the first guided instructions and then complete the task without guided instructions in the second part using the simulator. We have designed the training for all stakeholders, so we've considered all end users, and users will have access to both training packages, so the full and shorter version. All quizzes and examinations are housed within that one block. And then the exercises, while they are embedded in the course, we will provide them separately for ease of access and for use along with the TREIO eEDES simulator outside of the training environment. We have also considered trainers. I did say that the course is self-paced and in the control of the professionals undertaking it, so there is no instructor required. But if a competent authority wants to include a trainer, then we will provide the materials, but also the mapping of content in the form of storyboards and the solutions to all quizzes and examinations for the trainers. We have also considered the competent authorities may wish to embed the e-learning in their own learning management system, not the one set up. And therefore we will provide all materials to the same as the trainers, but also the developer files, including all images, graphics, text, content, etc., and some information around the mapping of content in terms of the development files. And now I will hand back to Alex, who will cover some of the aspects of the TREIO eEDES simulator.
Thank you, Georgina. So I already hinted what's the main idea behind the TREIO eEDES simulator is, but I just want to go one step back and try to also cover for the original idea and where all this comes from. So in a face-to-face training or in a on-the-job situation, you will have your peers, you will have your training partner, or you will have a trainer with whom you can test a new system or you can explore new functionality. Ideally, you will have access to that new system via tailored profile, and your training partner will have the same. So every time when there is a particular functionality that requires communication between the two, you can easily negotiate between yourself what is the best approach to test it. However, when you are in an e-learning self-paced environment, you don't have a training partner that could support you in this process. So in order to be able to proceed, you need to find a way to simulate this communication. And it could be rather schizophrenic if you try to jump from one profile to another just to see how this communication goes. This is why we have tried to substitute the training partner with the TREIO autoresponder. So this is a special feature for training purposes that we have developed specifically for this project. And it's a form of an upgrade of the original eEDES system that is provided by the Commission. So it was done with the knowledge and agreement of the Commission, and we have been licensed to use the eEDES system in order to perform this training upgrade. So how does it work? So for the purposes of the TREIO project, we have installed a TREIO eCodex communication point, which is linked to the TREIO eCodex communication environment. On our site, there is the eEDES simulator that is available to send all the requests and communication messages through that eCodex communication point. So every one of our TREIO participants, when they initiate a request or they follow up on communication in the workflow, they send actual requests through the actual eCodex communication point. However, this information does not go to a real competent authority. It goes straight to the TREIO autoresponder, and the autoresponder is able to feed you back with actions or information depending on the scenario that you are implementing. And all these scenarios and the way you are to move forward into these scenarios is information that is embedded in the TREIO eLearning course. However, we also provide these training scenarios separately from the eLearning course in case you feel comfortable with proceeding through the guidelines and the instructions given there on your own. And here we go to those 10 training scenarios that Georgina already mentioned. So 7 of them covers for actions that could be performed on the issuing side. And then the other 3 that you see at the bottom of the screen reflects on actions that could be performed by the executive authority. Now, also judging from the titles of each of these scenarios, the aim here is to go through, by doing these exercises, is to go through the key points in the EIO exchange and to be able, through the learning by doing approach, to cover up on how, during the training process, on what is the best way to do this action or that action, so that you can then do it on your own with another use case. All of these scenarios follow the if and then behavior, meaning that you have a list of actions that needs to be performed going through the scenario, and every time that you go through a specific step or you take upon a specific action, there is the respective feedback or response or communication message coming from the TREIO autoresponder that recognizes the steps that you have undertaken. Of course, when you go outside the scenario, the TREIO autoresponder won't be able to support you in the process. It's not an AI tool, it's just an automated, there's just this automated functionality. But in reality, it has proven to be very helpful when you're learning the basics on how to use the system, or when you enter the system for first time and you're trying to guide yourself through the different functionalities. So depending on the use case that you explore, you actually either play on the issuing side or on the executing side. And in all those scenarios where you are in the position of the issuing authority, you should select as your executing state the TREIO autoresponder from the bottom of the member states list that you see here. And this is how then the TREIO autoresponder could be able to support you in your training process. Vice versa, in the other scenario, type of scenarios where you play the role of the executing authority, you'll be in a position to react to a received EIO. But in order to react to a received EIO, you need to first receive it. In order to do that, you trigger the TREIO autoresponder to provide you with an EIO that you can then process. And there are different scenarios for this type of situations, depending on what type of reflection you want to exercise. As I kind of hinted in the very beginning, everyone who signed up for these webinars will receive complimentary access to both the TREIO eLearning course and the TREIO eEDES simulator. So what I'm going to show you now is how to access the TREIO eEDES simulator and to give you a very brief overview of how the system looks and feels. So along with the credentials, we will also provide you with brief guidelines on how to access the tools. The TREIO eEDES simulator can be accessed through this link that you see on the screen. And I just moved to my browser so that I can show you how you can work with the system. So indeed, what you need is a browser. You type in the address that I showed you, and then you use the credentials that we are to provide you with to initiate the signing in process. Once you sign in the platform, you will see an exact replica of the original eEDES system, as I already told you. And the only way to recognize that this is not the real system, but it is the TREIO eEDES simulator, is through this icon here that shows you that this is our solution, not the real system. Here you can see your username, and by going to your profile, you will see the different roles that are assigned to you. In real life situations, all these access rights will be provided to you by your competent authority, depending on the competencies and the role that you play on national level in the EIO exchanges. For training purposes, we have given all these profiles that will be assigned to you full rights, meaning that you can explore all the functions of the system while in a training mode. You can be the author of the EIO, for example. You can be the reviewer, the signer, the sender, and so on. You can also switch to different languages versions of the system through this button here, just like I did in the very beginning. So here you can opt to proceed in English, to move into Portuguese, or to select any of the other European languages. Now, this is like the very basic framework of the system. So if we want to initiate a request, we go to the Start New Request button here, and we choose the type of request we want to initiate. At the moment, we only have the EIO, the MLA, and the ITN option. But with the further upgrades of the system, when new judicial cooperation instruments are integrated into the framework of the system, you'll be able to see all those judicial cooperation instruments here, again, depending on your competencies and the role that you have on national level in the judicial cooperation domain. Now, let's assume we want to initiate an European investigation order request. We select this option here, and now we need to describe the subject of our request. For the purposes of this presentation, I'll just put something really silly, just to make sure that we have something here in order to proceed. Then we click continue, and what we are actually doing now is to initiate an EIO request. Before you go to Annex A and start filling the separate sections of Annex A, you may notice that you have this overview section here, which first says, indeed, you're using the eEDES simulator in your position of an issuing state. When you opt for the TREIO autoresponder to be on the executing side, you'll see that name here. And when you go from one stage of the EIO workflow to the next, you also see how the status of the EIO case changes over time. And I will show you in a bit how a received request looks like, so you can see what I mean in terms of changing status. When you go down this page, you can also see the number of professionals and who are the professionals involved in this case on behalf of your competent authority. You can see all the documents attached to your case. And once you progress further in the workflow, I think you're all here. Apologies for this technical hiccup. So going back to where we were before this technical interruption. So we were looking at the overview section of a new EIO draft. So I've mentioned where you notice the change of the status of the EIO. You can also see here the different professionals on behalf of your competent authority participating in this case, all the documents that are to be attached further in the process. And then depending on the stage you have reached, you will also see the different deadlines that relate to that stage. But I will show you all this once I proceed with the example of a received EIO request. There is another feature among other supporting features that is quite important, and this is the timeline. It provides you with chronologically ordered information on all the communication messages and all the information that happens with this particular EIO case. When the case was created, the fact that we are now choosing to work on an EIO request, and then every time going from one stage to the next, you'll see here all the messages, all the documents that have been created, all the communication notifications that your message was received on the other side, and all that in a chronological order. It's important, this part is very important because it collects information not only from the eEDES system, but also from the eCodex system, meaning that you will know from the very beginning whether your communication is well received on the other side. And if for some reason there is a technical problem, you also notice it almost immediately. Now let's go to Annex A. It replicates the Annex A from the EIO directive, no surprise there, but it's upgraded a little bit. So in the original paper form, we don't have mandatory fields. And sometimes it happens that a professional working and being in a hurry sometimes forgets to fill a certain part, or sometimes based on their national practices, a certain section is not that important, while the receiving side considers it quite important. So for the purposes of this, two different mandatory fields have been identified from one section to the next. And you cannot proceed with completing the EIO unless you filled in these mandatory fields. And you can easily see which are those fields when you go from one section to the next. You see here this little red star indicating that this is a mandatory section. And every time when you are not sure whether you have completed that relevant part or not, you can validate your form. And it shows you where this important information is missing. Only when you complete all the missing parts, you'll be able to proceed. Here in the workflow button, you can see all the actions that you can perform at this particular stage. So here, considering we are in the very beginning of the process, we can only complete the EIO when the form is filled in. When you move to the next stage of the workflow, the type of actions and the number of actions that you see here will increase. And let me show you precisely that. If we go to receive requests, we check a random request, and you immediately see how the overview is already changed. What you see here is that this is an EIO that was issued by our TREIO autoresponder, triggered by a request coming from the user. And now the user, in this case me, the user is acting on the executing side. Here is the status of the case. And just by a glimpse, seeing which are the activated icon, we can easily identify at which stage we are. So this is an EIO request which have already been replied with Annex B. So Annex B is active. And you can go through the original Annex A and then through the Annex B that was already sent. If you go down the screen, you will see also all the documents as they have been attached first to Annex A and then to Annex B, and you can see the relevant deadlines assigned for this case and the fact that some of them have already expired. If you go back to the top of the screen and you go to the event and message timeline, you will also see the chronological order of these communications. And when you go along with a more complicated case, obviously you will see a lot more messages here referring to the different documents, the different communication messages, and so on. I'm not going to go into any more details. I just wanted to show you the basics. Something that I forgot in this situation is to show you how the workflow option have changed. If you go here, just because we are at this particular stage of the workflow, you can see how different these button options look like. Because we are now in a different situations and we have much more options to respond in this particular stage of the EIO case. If we go back to the dashboard, for example, on received requests, you can see different filters and search options provided by the system. So you can more easily navigate between the requests received, especially when you proceed with your work and there is quite a big number of requests coming in. For each of these requests, you can see whether it's an urgent case. You can see briefly the subject of the case. You can see which is the member state who sent it, what type of request it is, and what is the current status of the request. This status again changes over time depending on the stage of the exchange that you have reached. What's more important here, you also have a special part of the dashboard dedicated to deadlines. And each of these deadlines is linked to a specific expected response from your side. So this could help you already with your day-to-day planning, knowing what's coming or knowing what's urgent in a particular situation. So again, these are the very basics of the tool. I'm not going into any more details as this is not an EIO training, but my idea was just to show you how it feels and looks so that you know more what to expect when you go online, when you start working with the eEDES simulator. And on top of this framework that you see now, you also have the exercises that I talked about, and you'll be able to explore the different modalities of the autoresponder. So what else we can offer you besides this, the access to the e-learning course and the eEDES simulator? On top of this complementary access that we'll send you, you'll be able to also receive all the training materials, all the guidelines that we have produced in the various languages. There is a section on our website that is created specifically for these purposes. It is not yet fully ready. It will be in the next 10 or so days, and on this section, we will gradually upload all these sets of documents, information, guidelines, instructions, and everything that was developed through this project. Once this section is fully loaded with materials, we'll send you a notification over email, and then you could go online and cherry pick on those materials that you might find suitable for your day-to-day work. You can also share the presentation from today's webinar along with the recording of the webinar to your colleagues, with your peers. And if they are also interested to receive access to the tools, they can go to the link that you see on the screen, and they could request such personalized access. Access details will be sent to them in a brief period of time, and then they will be also able to see the rest of the materials that I just spoke about. One important note that applies to both you receiving complimentary access and everyone else that sign up for accessing these materials. In the very beginning, you will receive one and the same username and password for all the tools that I presented. When you go to the e-learning course and you sign up for the e-learning course for the first time, the system will ask you, for security reasons, the system will ask you to change your password with a new one, and from then on, you'll only be using the new password to access the learning environment. However, the original password will remain the same for the eEDES simulator and the autoresponder, and you need to differentiate between the two, the original and the new one, and what they're to be used for. It's not a problem, I think, long term, but some participants forget over time that the password has changed, or what is the modalities of that password. And they tend to come back to us with messages, my credential doesn't work, how can I get new credentials, and stuff like that. So this is why we are making this explicit point. So now we have reached the end of our presentation. So we are at your disposal in case you have any questions with regards to what you have seen, or you could also share your views on the presented tools. We have already received quite a number of comments through our registration forms. So we can also go through those, just to make sure that all participants in our webinars received one and the same information. In reality, most of the comments concerning the training content, the different training modalities, have already been incorporated in the presentation that we gave together with Georgina. Some participants ask, for example, for the participation of Eurojust in the process, or on how to better explore the EGN Atlas, what type of attachments and the size of the attachments that could complement an EIO request and stuff like that. So these are more on the organizational or more on the technical side. So if any of these topics is of interest to you, just let us know and we are here to answer. You can put your comments in the chats, or you can also vocally raise them. It's up to you.
I don't see any questions in the chat, Alex.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
Well,
Yes.
my name is Carla, and I'm from I'm in Lisbon, the app de Lisboa, and I had already meeting in our central authority where we have tried this platform. I have already a password, but I don't remember, and the username. I don't know, because it was our central authority that created it when we had that first contact with this program. And I'm not sure if I'm able to know that username and password again. So it will be the same, or I have to ask for?
No, it will be a different one.
Okay.
So I assume it was around November 2022 when you,
yes,
when you received this credentials. And at the time, in all our trainings, we used the original eEDES training environment that was provided by the Commission. But it is the very basic one. It does not have the TREIO autoresponder attached to it. So those credentials are not working anymore. So now you will receive new ones where you can access our instance of the eEDES system, and then you'll be able to explore the system again and play along with these exercises.
Okay.
So no worries, you will receive new access for sure, and it will remain active as long as we have the tools active.
Yes, I think it's very useful, the eEDES, and it would be great if we started to use it as soon as possible. I'm not, Lisbon is not
one of the pilot.
Yes, it's not a pilot, but I've received already EIOs from eEDES to execute. So it works. And it would be great to use it more.
Thank you very much for this feedback. I hope the use of the simulator will enhance a bit your experience, and you'll be even readier to proceed in a real-time environment when the time comes. I have currently, I have to admit, I don't know what are the plans of the Portuguese competent authorities on how to proceed with the eEDES deployment further. But in reality, all the member states are a bit cautious to proceed. And I think it will all expand really quickly once more member states join the piloting process. So we are indeed hoping that by the end of this year, the number of competent authorities joining the platform will increase sufficiently so that the member states could evaluate the real positive aspects of the system. And as you said, it's easy to use, it's good to have it, so let's have it.
Yes, it's very easy to use it. So
it's very intuitive, and it doesn't take long to get to know how to move between different functions. If I remember correctly, it took us about 4 hours during that Portuguese training to go through all the main functions, and everyone managed to complete their exercises successfully. So in real life, it's really easy to proceed.
Yes, and easy to control.
Yes.
Easier to control than by email. That's what we do now.
Yes.
So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there questions or comments from anyone else in the webinar? Okay. In any case, this won't be the end of the conversation. We already promised you some feedback from our side with regards to materials, credentials, and different notifications. So vice versa, you can get in touch with us anytime when you have some difficulties on using the tools or when you have certain concerns regarding the tools. Even if we don't have the immediate answer, we'll for sure know who is the right person to answer your questions. So we'll forward the respective correspondence. So don't be afraid to get in contact with us, and we will remain at your services. Thank you very much for today. Thank you for signing up. Thank you for spending time, and thank you for coming back despite this technical glitch that we had. So as promised, we will share all the materials and the recordings as soon as possible later this week. Thank you again, and have a nice week ahead of you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.